Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'll be listing my top 5 greatest fighters to never win a UFC title. And this video is inspired much by Alexander Gustafsson retiring, or at least for now retiring. And a lot of people saying that he might be the greatest fighter to never hold a UFC title, based off his performances in title fights against Jon Jones and Cormier, etc., and his status and all that stuff. So, first off, this is gonna be my opinion. It's not like this is fact, but this is my opinion, and it's not gonna be based off of. It's gonna be off my own kind of rubric for how I rate the top 5 greatest fighters to never hold a UFC title. I think it's gonna be like kind of a mixture of how they fared in title fights, plus how their skills, their resume, and some of the names outside of their title fights and stuff they've done. So pretty much outside of going for the title, what else have they accomplished? It's gonna be a good mixture of that, and it might lean more towards what have they done outside of fighting for the title. So let's just get into the top 5. So number 5, a lot of people might disagree. Well, some people might disagree with this person, but I'm gonna have to go with Dan Henderson. And I think a lot of people fall into the same, spot as Dan Henderson. Is they had great careers outside of UFC, maybe won titles outside of UFC, came to UFC, didn't win the title, but maybe had a little bit more success inside the UFC than Dan Henderson. But I'm gonna lean to Dan Henderson because when he came to UFC, he was a champ, the original champ. Long ago, he was the prior middleweight and welterweight champion. Came over and got 2 title fights. Got one against Rampage and got one against Anderson Silva. Came up short in both. The Rampage one was real close. The Anderson Silva one, he won the first round and got submitted in the second round. And then towards the end of his career, he came back in the UFC with being a Strikeforce champion. Was supposed to get a title shot against Jon Jones. It didn't happen. Lost a couple fights. Dropped down to middleweight. He won some fights, lost some fights at light heavyweight, then dropped down to middleweight, won some fights, lost some fights. Then just as he was about to retire, he knocked out Hector Lombard, then got his 3rd title fight in the UFC by, I guess, a gifted title fight against Michael Bisping, who he knocked out in historic fashion, in epic fashion years ago. So it was enough to warrant him a title shot. And he got that title shot, and though he really only won about maybe 2 minutes maximum of that fight, there still was a real slim case that he won that fight, especially dropping Bisping in the first and maybe in the second or something like that, and then getting some control with his wrestling in the 5th. So there was certainly a case, and despite him not really winning most of that fight, he put up a respectable performance, especially being as old as he was and basically 1 foot out the door to come in there and put on that type of performance against a much evolved Bisping and still show that he still has that much left in the tank. So that's why Dan Henderson in that spot. He had his career speaks for itself, one of the best careers all time, because he's won Pride belts. He's won Strikeforce belts. He did win a UFC belt. It wasn't the undisputed thing, but it was like a tournament belt. So technically he did win a UFC belt. But yeah, his career is just crazy. Has wins over heavyweights, welterweights, light heavyweights. He just all over the place. He has an amazing career. So now on to our number 4 spot. It's Alexander Gustafsson. So one of the main reason why this video has been made, and he's at number 4. So some people are like, why is he not higher? And I'm going to explain why he's not higher, and I'm going to explain why he's on the list as well. So, Alexander Gustafsson, I can't mess his name, but Alexander Gustafsson, phenomenal career. But the issue I have with Alexander Gustafsson is that his career, the best and worst thing in his career was that first Jon Jones fight. It was good because, it turned him from, I guess, a relatively unknown outside of, the really people who watch MMA into kind of a household name, at least around the world. Maybe not as much in America, but definitely in different parts of the world, especially Europe and such, that part of the world. He became a real big name because he was that big star, and certainly propelled him to be the face of Swedish MMA. So, and one of the biggest face of that European scene. That one fight, despite it being lost, it propelled his career. And also he kind of got stuck on that loss because he felt he beat Jon Jones. A lot of other people said they feel he beat Jon Jones, so he got hung up on that one fight. And he really rode his career off that, and it was a good thing for his career and the worst thing for his career, because he started acting kind of like a prima donna, just not really fighting and being as active as he could. His performances in title fights were phenomenal. He gave 2 of the greatest fighters of all time in Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier hard fights, and that's why he's even on this list. But outside of that, when you really look at his resume, what has he really done outside of those fights, which were losses? His best win probably is Glover Teixeira, who was already older and had lost to Jon Jones already, lost to Anthony Rumble Johnson, lost to Phil Davis. And he fought him much older than those guys fought him. And that was his best win. And that was only last year, 2018, 2017? Yeah, probably 2017. And outside of what he has wins over, Jimmy Manua, Jan Blachowicz, and Shogun. So when you look at his resume, you really can't. It's hard to find 5 good names he's beaten, and that's really due to him being an activist. Like he certainly could have beat a lot of these other people that other people have beaten to like raise their resume up, but it really is either due to him getting injuries or maybe just trying to sit on the sideline and just get fights off of winning one fight because he felt I gave John Jones such a good fight and let me get a title shot based off a 1-fight winning streak when he could have been stacking up his resume, or just at least making it more vouchable for him to get a title shot than just trying to lean on one performance, which was a loss. So that's really where a lot of issue with his career goes. Like he has a solid career, he's a solid fighter, and you certainly believe he was like the guy right beneath the Cormiers and John Jones. John Jones and Cormier in their own kind of lane, and Gustafsson was right there beneath them. And you believe he's that good. But then you look at his resume, like outside of those performances, which were losses, it's really hard to pick really anything good about his performances or his wins or like the wins on his record. And even guys that like Ryan Bader and Phil Davis have like better wins than him outside of maybe, well, I guess better wins, maybe not better performance because he has those John Jones and Cormier losses. But as far as overall this competition outside of those title fights, I think their resume stack higher than his. And that's just kind of an issue with his name. Like I said, he became a prima donna. The best thing about him, the best and worst thing to happen to him was that first John Jones fight. And then after the second John Jones fight, he pretty much lost everything he had. Like that was what he held on to so much that I was the guy who beat John Jones, and I'm the guy who's going to beat John Jones again to just get outclassed in the second fight. He just pretty much lost all of his fire after that fight. So again, the best and worst thing to happen to him was that first John Jones fight. And then the second John Jones fight just pretty much put a stamp on his career, just put a nail in his coffin, or at least for now. So Gustafsson sits firmly at number 4. So now number 3, we have Donald Cerrone, who's kind of like the opposite of Gustafsson in a way. His title performances are poor, but outside of that, he's a killer. Like outside of those big spotlight fights where he's challenging for a title or right near in a title, Cerrone is pretty much money. He's always going out there, always active. Even later in his later years as he is now, he still can go out there fight 4 or 5 times a year if he wanted to. I think right now he kind of dropped to 3 fights a year, but he's been active. And no matter how many times he loses in these title fights or how bad he loses in these title fights, it seems like he always finds a way to get back his momentum and start streaking again, start looking good. Skill set's undeniable. His skills are undeniable. His resume is undeniable. And like what you like about a guy like Cerrone is this was the benefit of being active. Is like unlike some other fighters who kind of start getting stale because they don't want to be active. They be on top of the world, and all of a sudden they get left behind because they're not being active. Cerrone, he managed to stay with the curb because he's always active. He's always fresh, always innovating, and always finding ways to stick around, get better, and improve because he's always out there fighting. So his performances in title fights might be poor. When we look at the names, he has a lot of solid names on his record, and he's won a lot of streaks. You got guys like Essen Barboza on his record, finished him. Got Jim Miller on his resume, finished him. Eddie Alvarez went on to be a UFC champion, was a Bellator champion, and pretty much every league he's been in so far was a champion in those leagues, and he beat Eddie Alvarez. So a lot of solid names on it. Then you got like veterans like Matt Brown. You got, like you just go on and on with him. He just has I'm not even go because like he started on this thing, but Charles Oliveira. But pretty much he got a lot of solid names on the record. They all might not be like standouts. They all might not be former champions and stuff like that. But a lot of guys you certainly recognize on the record, and a lot of them he stopped or finished. And then he just beat Ally Quinta. So his resume certainly speaks for itself. I only think it's like kind of opposite of that. I kind of favor more the guy like we can say like, yes, he didn't win a title, but so did a guy like Gustafsson. He didn't win a title either. But outside of that, Cerrone's been putting in work. You never really hear him being hung up on a loss and talking about, I did this, I was close, or this. He did make one excuse here and there, but you never get the sense that he's holding on to anything too much about. He takes his loss on the chin and keeps going, keeps been out there, keeps been active. He got a big name to him too, so he's not sitting on the side like I'm Donald Cerrone. I'm only gonna fight this guy, and that guy. No, he's going out there fighting whoever they put in front of him, and he's a true fighter. And like I said, despite kind of coming up short in those title fights, and despite them being poor performances, outside of that, he's been a workman and just been putting in work, and his resume shows. So that's why he's at number 3. So Donald Cerrone sits firmly at number 3. Now on to our number 2. This might be a shocker to some of y'all. Like, why isn't this guy number 1? But number 2 is Yoel Romero. So Yoel Romero, one of the scariest dudes in all of MMA history. Explosive, athletic, despite being 40 now. Still got that knockout power. Still athletic, more athletic than fighters like half his age. Just crazy athleticism, crazy power, crazy athleticism. There's a crazy story about him, and his resume is crazy as well. He came up short in the like 3 title fights, well, 2 title fights, and the third one is just because he missed weight. Like the first one was an interim title against Robert Whittaker, which was close, but Whittaker won clear enough. Second one was supposed to be against Rocco, but he missed weight, so he technically could have won a belt, but that's not a plus on his thing. That's a negative because he missed weight. It's not like something else happened. It's his own fault for he didn't win that belt. So it's not gonna be a positive that he could have won a belt. It's a negative because it was due to his own fault that he didn't win that belt. So he basically could have won an interim belt if he would have beat Rocco, and he wouldn't even have been on this list. He would have been a champion. Knocked Rocco out, which is a good win. Then his third time, he got a chance at the what's called an undisputed belt by fighting Whittaker again. Came close to winning that fight. Might have won the fight if he made weight. They might have just gave it to him, but because he didn't make weight, maybe the judges felt some type of way and just gave it to Whittaker. But close fight nonetheless. And then even that fight, some way you could say it's more of a case that Whittaker won than Romero or this and that. But he lost that fight, so he pretty much still came up short in all of his title fights, whether it be for his own reasons or judges or this and that. He never won a title. But look at his resume. Like the positive about him is that he got win over 2 of the greatest middleweight champions of all time in Rockhold, and he got a win over Chris Weidman. Knocked them both out in the third round. He got a win over former light heavyweight champion Lyoto Machida. Got wins over big names like Tim Kennedy, etc., etc. He just got a really phenomenal record. He got a win over a top middleweight in Derek Brunson. So when you just look at his resume all over, he has lots of wins over solid fight. Oh, he got a win over Jacare Souza. Though it was close and kind of went to Jacare Souza's way, it was a win nonetheless. So we just look at his resume, just good wins all over the board. He might not be the most active, but he certainly be stacking up some good wins. I think he's kind of slowed down to maybe fighting once or twice a year, but his resume already speaks for itself. So many solid names. We just look all over his record. So Yoel Romero was a beast, and he holds strongly onto that second spot. So now to our number 1 greatest fighter to never hold a UFC title, never to win a UFC title. And this fighter is Joseph Benavidez. And a lot of people sleep on him. A lot of people, when I say this, a lot of people just call him Megan Olivier's husband or midget boyfriend or whatever they want to call him. But Joseph Benavidez is super slept on. When we look at his resume, outside of that one kind of questionable loss to Sergio Pettis, the only people he's lost to were Mighty Mouse and Dominic Cruz. So the greatest bantamweight of all time and the greatest flyweight of all time. Then he has wins over a lot of solid wins. Both his fights were Dominic Cruz were close. His first fight with Mighty Mouse was close. Then he's got a win over Jussier Formiga. Got wins over I don't think he fought Ian McCall. Before that other Ali Bagu Tinov. Got wins over former bantamweight champions. Got a win over Henry Cejudo. But he pretty much got a lot of wins just all over the board. He just was streaking, and he's always staying active, despite him being 0-4 in title fights combined in WC and UFC. He's stayed hungry. A lot of people, when they lose a title fight, or especially even one, let alone 2, they just kind of just lose all that fire. But he's managed to stay around, keep improving, and keep winning. Like, he's just going out there beating all these young, hungry contenders. They keep throwing at him and standing around, showing a well-rounded skill set, well-rounded resume. I mean, it's a solid resume, solid fighter. And he's been in the game. He's been the ultimate number 2 guy. He was the number 2 guy to Dominic Cruz, then was the number 2 guy to Mighty Mouse. And now the guy who holds the belt currently is the guy he has the last win over. So last guy to beat Cejudo was Benavidez. And look at how good Cejudo's doing. If Cejudo keeps elevating, that just shows you adds more to Benavidez's resume. Like, it shows that he beat a guy that's of that caliber. And this is to show that the people he's been around and been able to stick around in that weight class. And it was a solid fight at 135 and 1. So that's 2 different weight classes. He was the top, pretty much the number 2 guy at. And he probably go at 135 and still be a top 135er. At 125 is no doubt in that he's a top 125er. Like I said, over the years, despite losing these title fights, coming up short, the hunger stayed there. He's continued to prove, and one of the best fighters of all time, and definitely one of the most underrated fighters of all time. As far as just the full package, just good performances in title fights, the solid resume with a whole list of solid names, I think he ranks above everyone else on the list as far as the greatest fighters to never win a title, unless he does win a title. But things currently stand, he hasn't won a title. So at this point, he's the greatest fighter, in my opinion, to never win a UFC title. And that completes my list for the top 5 greatest fighters to never win a UFC title or to not win a UFC title. And you can disagree or whatnot, and we could talk about it in the comment section below. But that completes this video. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and come back for more videos. Peace.